Hey y'all, it's Michelle Johnson from Have Color Will Travel, and today I'm continuing my exploration of crayons and petroleum jelly by creating a beautiful, airy, fantasy, fluffy cotton candy background on this colorable card from my colorable card collection over at havecolorwilltravel.com called Flower Power. The card is printed on Fabriano Studio 140-pound hot pressed watercolor paper. So this is a pretty stiff quality paper to be coloring on. I've already got my color swatches over to the side, and that's something I did off camera where I just took the colors I was interested in using. Today I wanted to use jewel tones, and I just colored as hard as I could to create a palette over there. I'm also going to be using just my tub of petroleum jelly that I use for art and some cotton swabs. Now, these cotton swabs are a little bit older, so their fluff was a little loosey-goosey. I think if you had some that were fresh, I don't use these very often, so this is assumptions that I'm sharing with you, but I think if they were fresh from the store, they might be a little bit more firm on the top of that tip. So you want to get that cotton swab and put it into your petroleum jelly. I've dug a little hole in there to kind of avoid my colored pencil spots, but that's not something you absolutely have to do. And then you take that swab, which has a pretty good amount, and it's not glooped on, it's just kind of covering the outside of the cotton swab. And then you pinch, because remember, cotton swabs are not very strong. You pinch the edge between your fingers and just kind of push it around on your swatch card. And it picks up that pigment because petroleum jelly softens the waxy pigment of the crayon. And it creates for you a blunt type tip of a brush. Now you could brush this like you could any other type of paintbrush, up and down, side to side, hatch marks or whatever, but I really wanted to do a swirling pattern because I wanted my background to kind of echo the bubbles of the illustration that I'd created in the stylized vase, which I'm not going to be showing you how to color that part. I'm really only working on the backgrounds with this video. So I did find as I went along that some colors kind of needed me to recharge the palette, and once it's got petroleum jelly on it, you will find that the color doesn't seem to be sticking to your swatch, but instead it kind of peels and crumbles. That's actually to our benefit because it doesn't matter if you're just picking up the pigment flat or not. Those little crusts are just as easy to use on your background as if you didn't have them all crusty. So I sped up this process of creating the background because it's pretty simple. You saw what you need to do. Have some petroleum jelly, have some cotton swabs, create a swatch card, mix those all together, and have fun. This background took me about the length of one album. I'm an 80s child, so I think in albums, not song list on Spotify. And I was listening to The Cure at the time, so I think that's probably about 40 minutes. And I just had a wonderful time going back and forth creating this gradient. I tried to keep my colors organized by using two colors back to back in my gradient so that you can't tell in high speed, but I was flipping my swab back and forth, pulling those colors up from the bottom, down from the top, very similarly how you would create a gradient using colored pencils or even Sharpies when you create Sharpie gradients. So the coloring technique would be exactly the same. Now this card is still wet. It does take some time for petroleum jelly coloring techniques to dry, whether or not you're using crayons or colored pencils. But I can still bring you in nice and close so that you can see this texture without ruining any of the marks that I made. And isn't this fun? I love the swirls and the twirls that it creates. Of course, I did this on purpose by doing a circular motion, but you could do any number of things with the petroleum jelly on the cotton swab. Most folks want to know, does it fade through to the back? Like I said before at the beginning of the video, this is 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. So there isn't any color or pigment that sinks through, not even any oil spots. And it is still tacky at this time. But If you used a thinner quality paper, you might see some oil spill through, so you want to keep that in mind. These are old swatches that I did quite a while ago, and they're nice and dry. I did them on this page from a mixed media sketchbook back in October because I'm now really curious about what kinds of art supplies I can use on top of a petroleum jelly background after it is completely dried. I think that's going to really yield some interesting results, so I hope you'll stay tuned and watch that video next.